The first generation Barracuda earned its place in history by arriving first. But being first wasn't enough. While Ford's Mustang captured headlines and sales records, Plymouth's pioneering pony car struggled to escape the shadow of the Valiant from which it was born. It was clear that if the Barracuda was going to survive the rapidly escalating pony wars, it would need to become something more than a fastback economy car. For 1967, Plymouth answered the challenge with an all-new Barracuda. Though it still rode on Chrysler's proven A-body platform, nearly everything buyers could see was new. Sleeker styling, multiple body styles, larger engines, and an unmistakable performance attitude finally gave the Barracuda an identity all its own. It wasn't just trying to compete anymore. It was determined to prove it belonged among Detroit's best. This was the generation where the Barracuda found its footing. It became quicker, bolder, and more confident with each passing year, setting the stage for the legendary muscle car that was still waiting in the wings. This is the history of the second generation Plymouth Barracuda. While the first generation Barracuda was out making its mark in the world, Plymouth was already at work on the next generation. Headed up by Dick McAdam, the design team once again employed the skills of John Sampson and newcomer John Hurlitz, who was fresh out of college with his bachelor's degree in industrial design from the Pratt Institute. Hurlitz joined the Plymouth design staff in 1964, where one of his first projects was to design the Barracuda SX show car. By mid-64, the SX was mocked up in clay and definitely set the tone as to what the next generation Barracuda would look like. Obviously, one mission was to distinguish the looks of the Barracuda from the Valiant, which the Barracuda SX accomplished decisively. However, they had another goal, and that was increasing its size. You see, one of the Barracuda's main competitors, the Mustang, was already sizing up to accept the big block for 1967. And the newly introduced Chevy Camaro came out of the gates with a small and big block power, while the Pontiac Firebird was solely big block powered. Not to mention, Ford's luxury brand, Mercury, introduced the Cougar that shared the Mustang platform, which meant that it too would receive a big block. So the boys at Plymouth had no choice but to get with the program and design the new model to accept the big block. The new Barracuda design would be extended to a 108-inch wheelbase and widened 2 inches to accommodate the big block 383, much to the surprise of automotive magazines, as they had doubted Plymouth's resolve to build a serious competitor. But a serious competitor it was. Plymouth got with the times and offered the Barracuda in 3 body styles. The fastback, of course, but they also added a coupe and convertible. The Mustang was the only other competitor that offered a fastback, while the other players had coupes and convertibles only. While the 67 Barracuda was Plymouth's most serious venture yet, it still wasn't quite sporty enough. Don't get me wrong, magazines and enthusiasts alike touted the new design as the best looking yet, and wondered why they didn't build it like this in the first place. However, the Barracuda still shared not only the chassis of the Valiant, but the cowl and especially the windshield that wasn't sloped back very far compared to the Mustang and Camaro. So if you drove a Barracuda, you sat up taller. Not necessarily a bad thing, but not a great thing either. For the fastback, the size of the rear glass was reduced, improving the rear looks. For those who wanted more trunk space, there was the coupe. It shared all the lines of the fastback except for the roof and rear section. The convertible brought the fun with a smart-looking drop top with the same performance as the other 2 styles. The interior was a definite upgrade from the previous model. A bench seat came standard in the coupe and fastback with bucket seats optional, while the convertible came with bucket seats only. The engines for 1967 was definitely more exciting. First, the 225 slant 6 remained the engine for the base model at 145 horsepower and 215 pound-feet of torque. Next was the 273 V8. There were two versions. The first came with a 2-barrel carburetor and an 8.8 to 1 compression ratio with 180 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. The second 273 was the Commando V8 and served as the base engine for the Formula S package. The Commando V8 featured 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, a hotter camshaft, and a 600 CFM Cuda FB 4-barrel carburetor. These mods bumped the power up to 235 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. The top-of-the-line engine was the 383 Commando V8 Big Block. It was why the redesigned Barracuda received a larger engine bay in the first place. Equipped with a 10 to 1 compression ratio, a 575 CFM Cuda FB, and a performance camshaft, the 383 was good for 280 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. For transmission options, the 3-speed manual served as the base transmission for all slant 6s and 2-barrel 273 V8 cars. The 4-speed manual was available for 2-barrel and 4-barrel 273 cars and on all Formula S equipped cars. A torque flight automatic transmission was optional for all engines. Power was transferred to the ground via either a 7 1/4 rear diff or an 8 3/4 rear diff. The 7 1/4 inch rear came standard on all slant 6 cars, all 273 2-barrel cars, and automatic equipped 4-barrel 273 cars. 8 3/4 inch rear diffs came on all 273 4-barrel 4-speed cars, all 2-barrel or 4-barrel cars with the Sure Grip option, and all 383 cars. Ratios range from 293, 323, 355, or 391. However, the 391 was not an option for the 383 cars. With the popularity of the Formula S package from the previous generation, it only made sense to keep it for this new generation. Most of the attributes of the previous generation was carried over in the form of the handling package, special badging, and optional stripe. Inside, the Formula S was treated to a 150 mile-an-hour speedometer as opposed to the standard 120 mile-an-hour version, and was given the option of the smaller center gauge being either a tachometer, a clock, or a performance indicator vacuum gauge. But the big news for the Formula S in 1967 was the addition of the 280 horsepower 383 Big Block. It was sorely needed since America's most popular pony car, the Mustang, introduced a 390 Big Block, and the newly introduced 67 Camaro offered a 396 Big Block. Unfortunately, since the 383 was a tight fit in the engine compartment, creature comforts like power steering and air conditioning were unavailable. Overall, the 67 Barracuda was a nice car. Considered sort of blocky looking compared to the Mustang and Camaro, but still had a unique enough look to attract its own following. For 1968, the Barracuda was refined in its looks and offered more performance. It was still offered in 3 body styles: coupe, fastback, and convertible, and side marker lights were introduced. Backup lights removed from the rear valance and incorporated into the taillight assembly. In front, the grille was spruced up for a more refined appearance, while the Plymouth lettering was moved over to the left side for a cleaner look. While the interior layout was basically the same, there were some slight differences. New for 68 were shoulder straps for increased safety. The 145 horsepower 225 slant 6 remained the base engine, but the 273 V8 was dropped altogether. In its place was the 2-barrel equipped 318. With a respectable 9.2 to 1 compression ratio, the 318 was good for 230 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque. Next were 2 versions of the all-new 340 Commando, the SMT for manual cars and AMT for automatic cars. The biggest difference was the SMT received a longer duration, higher lift camshaft. The end result for both engines was 275 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque. The resident big block bully was the 383 for the second year. Plymouth engineers perked it up with a pair of dyno 6-cylinder heads from the Roadrunner. They shared the same intake valve diameter of the previous year engine at 2.08 inches, but enjoyed a larger exhaust valve at 1.74 versus the 1.60. 383 cars also came with a larger diameter 2.5-inch exhaust over the standard 2.25-inch version from last year. However, the 273 cars kept the 2.25 exhaust. This all added up to a 20 horsepower increase to 300, while torque remained at 400 pound-feet. There was one power plant available that wasn't on the regular menu, and that was the 426 Hemi. You see, back in 1964, NASCAR placed a ban on large displacement engines, causing every manufacturer except for Ford and Mercury to boycott the 1965 season. Instead, Chrysler focused their efforts on drag racing, namely NHRA's stock eliminator class. They developed special packages on a limited number of specially equipped turnkey race cars only. Their first efforts were the A64 and A990 Hemi drag package for the Dodge Savoy and Plymouth Belvedere, featuring the 426 race Hemi with cast iron heads and a 12.5-to-1 compression ratio. To learn more about these special drag packages, check out The History of the Chrysler Hemi Gen 2 or The Complete History of the Chrysler Hemi. Dodge and Plymouth offered these special Hemi drag packages all the way up through 1967. Option code RO23 got you a Plymouth Belvedere, while WO23 got you a Dodge Coronet. Under the hoods featured a warmed-up A102 Street Hemi that sported an additional 50 horses. Now, in 1968, the drag package option was stepped up a notch with the LO23 and BO29 option for the Dodge Dart and, you guessed it, the Plymouth Barracuda, otherwise known as the Superstock cars. Built by Hearst, these Superstock cars were just that, built to compete in NHRA Superstock. They were stripped of any unnecessary weight or accessories, lightened extensively with fiberglass front end pieces, and modified rear openings to accommodate large drag slicks. Under the hood was a dual quad cross ram 426 Hemi with 12.5-to-1 compression ratio. Horsepower numbers were rumored to be in the 540 range and were said to run constant 10-second quarter-mile times. Moving to 1969, it was the last year for this body style. The truth of the matter is, the muscle car wars were at fever pitch during this time, and to be honest, the Barracuda was running behind. Up until now, the largest engine available was the 383, but that was all about to change. Offered in the same three body styles, there were very little changes visually from one year to the next. One of the biggest additions was the mod top, a custom floral vinyl roof cover that was reminiscent of the peace and love of the 1960s. The mod top also came with matching seat and door panel inserts. The powertrain options were slightly enhanced. The base engine remained the 145 horsepower 225 slant 6, followed up by the 230 horsepower 318. The 340 SMT and AMT were dropped and now was simply the 340, still with 275 horsepower. The 383 Big Block was boosted once again with a larger cam and new carburetor to crank out 330 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. The BO29 special option was revived for 1969, but the Barracuda was enhanced with the addition of the 440 Super Commando Big Block. With its 10.1-to-1 compression ratio, the 440 was top of the heap at 375 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. Definitely a welcome addition. The Formula S line remained the same, offering the 340 and 383 power plants, but the big news for 1969 was the Cuda package. The foundation is the Formula S with the heavy-duty suspension components and D7014 tires for the 340 car and E7014 tires for the 383 car. The Cuda package added on top a twin scoop hood with dual black stripes and black lower trim. The front fenders feature the Cuda logo with the engine size on top. The Cuda package used every engine available in the Formula S package, but added the 440 as the top package. So while the Formula S stopped at the 383, you could upgrade to the Cuda and get the 440. By the end of 1969, the Barracuda had come a long way from the fastback Valiant that arrived before the Mustang. The second generation finally gave the Barracuda an identity of its own, while the addition of bigger engines, the Formula S, the 340, the 383, the 440, and even the fire-breathing BO29 Superstock proved that Plymouth was serious about performance. But the Barracuda was still fighting an uphill battle. The Mustang, Camaro, and Firebird had become household names, and the muscle car wars were reaching their peak. Plymouth knew that if the Barracuda was going to compete at the highest level, it couldn't simply evolve, it needed to be completely reimagined. And that's exactly what happened. For 1970, Plymouth threw out the old A-body formula and started with a clean sheet of paper. The Barracuda would finally leave the Valiant behind, grow wider and more aggressive, and become something entirely different. And somewhere along the way, the Barracuda name would take on a new identity of its own, the Cuda. This is where the story gets serious. In the final chapter of our Barracuda trilogy, we'll explore the third generation Barracuda, the E-body that gave us some of the most outrageous engines, styling, and performance ever to come out of Plymouth. From the 340 to the 440 six-pack and the legendary 426 Hemi. This was the Barracuda at the top of the food chain. The first generation arrived first. The second generation found its teeth. Now, the third generation was ready to bite. Stay tuned.